What's up, Planet Unity? Neptune Azazel here, and this time with a bit of a gaming discussion. Now, these videos take quite a few different turns, sometimes manga and anime related, sometimes gaming related. More often than not, they're just general discussion points, and this time I must bring up to you, the viewer, the fact that we have now a Shenmue 1 and 2 remaster coming. And I must say, it doesn't feel like it's that odd that we're getting this, because number 3 is coming out at the end of the year. At least that's the estimated release date. Now, if you remember correctly, it was a couple E3s ago when we had, the producer or the developer himself, come out, like, hey, we're crowdfunding number 3, if you want to donate, here's the link, and he pointed to the screen, and, almost instantaneously the game was funded because it's such a cult classic. You saw people flocking in droves. There was a Shenmue 500K group on Facebook. Look them up. That was highly behind the development of this game. Crowdfunding it almost of their own accord in a way. Like this group was one of the most devoted Facebook groups I've ever seen. Once that they announced that it was the funding limit had been met. And now it's just, stretch goals. They were throwing, like, parties like, yeah, we did it, we're getting our game. And I'm just like, how long before we see remasters? And it was announced during the Sega Fest, whatever event that just aired this week, where they announced yet another, micro console, not too dissimilar from this beautiful bastard right here, the Super Nintendo Classic. It's like every year they release another one of those. We saw a few other little miniature things, and then that being the major announcement. We see now that they've had this probably in the bag for quite a while at this point, and they've just been holding it off. Now, this also affects another market that I'm quite interested in and have many friends that work in this market, and the most prominent being Kate, who appeared on the 23.5 podcast, and one of the Azazels Den where I announced her joining the team. With her working at a retro shop, and quite a few of my friends, being in the market, like, oh, we'll buy this and we'll sell this, and it's quite interesting to see them talk about how Shenmue 2's price shot up, along with a few other titles I'm going to get into here in just a minute. So my question to you is, are we just really in the era of, remasters? And I kind of, myself, I see, a little bit of a shift towards, how many remasters we've had in the past. We've seen, upscale versions of, the God of War series, kind of, launching that. You saw, re-releases and re-releases and re-releases of games. God of War 3 getting a remaster on the PS4. We saw, games like Kingdom Hearts getting, port after port after port. And at this point, it's just like, are they trying to undermine this, the retro market, or are they trying to reinvigorate fans and engage interest in these titles? Most recently we had the Spyro Reignited trilogy. That was mostly announced through, like, an egg that was sent to influencers. And, it's something's hatching soon message, brought up, and it's like whatever handle that was at that Twitter before it became the Spyro account. It's kind of odd to see where we're going as an industry, and I kind of get it, and I kind of don't. What I am, so into at this point is the potential for series to be reinvigorated, essentially. And this reinvigoration comes from the interest of not only just these remaster titles, but the market for backwards compatibility. And this past week we had the Xbox Direct, essentially. I quite forget what they call their version of the Nintendo Direct, but the point remains the same. It's essentially the same program. One being Nintendo-oriented, and one being Xbox and Microsoft-oriented. And they announced the latest batch of the Xbox original titles coming to backwards compatibility through the Xbox One program, and those titles are as follows. We see on April 17th, Blinks the Time Sweeper, Breakdown, Conquer Live and Reloaded. We see The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, Hunter of the Reckoning, Jade Empire, Panzer Dragoon, Orta, and SSX 3. And then on the 26th, we see, let me drag this down a little bit. We see the Destroy All Humans franchise hit this program, Full Spectrum Warrior, Mercenaries Playground of Destruction, MX Unleashed, Panzer Elite Action Fields of Glory in the Europe territory. We see Battlefronts 1 and 2, the originals. We see Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, Jedi Starfighter, and we see KOTOR 2, Sith Lords, and Republic Commando hitting the Xbox One backwards compatibility program for Xbox One, the Xbox originals. Now, this program is such a great commodity for new fans and old fans alike. Now, what I'm not a fan of is the fact that this also raises the price of the titles in the retro market. But what I will say is this helps so many people discover these series, because if you're a physical collector like me, and pans over, and you see, the lovely, Xbox original titles. And I got many, many and more. And I just don't want to flare out of, Gambit style, like, oh, here's all my Xbox One. I couldn't, for one. But the fact remains that, I prefer physical over digital because I have that sense of ownership. So whenever they announce a title becomes backwards compatible, be it Xbox 360 or Xbox Original, you see that price shoot up like a goddamn rocket. And that was not the case with Panzer Dragoon Orta, which Ryan hopped in the chat like, yo, why is Panzer, Dragoon Orta, almost tripling overnight? I'm like, yeah, it's because it became backwards compatible. And he's like, oh, that makes sense then. And I sent, the screenshots of, here's all the titles that, just got announced for backwards compatibility. He's like, well, that explains quite a few of them. I'm like, yeah, it really does. And then you see the counter to that, the digitals are $10, $20 a piece. I'm like, god damn it. I could buy them for half the price on there than owning them physically. Because if your account gets banned or your account gets hacked, you no longer own that title. And that's one thing that always scares me, is will my account get hacked? Will my account get banned? Will my account, have any issues whatsoever, to where I no longer own my title? Or will a license get pulled? Something like that. If I uninstall, for example, now, if I uninstall Alan Wake, I no longer technically own it because it's a digital copy. But if I go out and buy Alan Wake, I own it. But Alan Wake physical copy is astronomical because of the whole music licensing issue. And the same thing with Grand Theft Auto 4 on PC. If you've read the news lately, a lot of the music tracks are being pulled from the PC version because it's still supported, and because they're losing the rights to a lot of that music. Because they only had licensed it for, so many years. And it's been almost 10, I think, at this point. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't touched Grand Theft Auto 4 in so many fucking years, it's not even funny. But the fact remains, GTA 4's, music is being pulled, some of them from the radio stations on there, because they're losing the marketing rights to it. Instead of, just pulling the game entirely from the store like Alan Wake did, which would have been a better issue, but the fact was that the music was involved in one specific mission, and would almost make the mission itself mute, from my understanding of that issue. So it was just a little bit of an easier aspect to pull the digital copy, so they won't have to continue to pay rights to it, versus, the physical copy, those people still technically own that, and they paid for the license for the music by buying the title. So that's the major issue with digital over, physical copies of games, and why I prefer, physical, is because I own this forever, as long as I own this disc, or this cartridge, or this, flash, or this UMD, or whatever you want to, call it, depending on what format. I almost forgot UMDs were a thing, but they were for the PSP. So now we see an entire another generation of gamers, technically experiencing games like this. So my other talking point for this video, and feel free to sound off in the comments, or do you foresee any of these franchises that have become backwards compatible, like your Dead to Rights, your Panzer Dragoons, your Blanks, your Conquers, your anything like that, gaining a new entry in their game? And the reason I bring this up, and this is an interesting thing, I believe it was Phil Spencer who tweeted out like he'd still love to see Banjo-Kazooie and Smash Brothers, because Banjo-Kazooie was originally an N64 title, and then once Microsoft scooped up Rare and they became the Kinect series, you saw games shit out constantly for like Kinect oriented, like Kinect Sports, Kinect Adventures, Kinect whatever. It was fucking asinine. But you also saw Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which was a colossal failure. Would you like to see these franchises revitalized by this? Because at this point, with the Rare Replay, you see fucking merchandise for Banjo-Kazooie coming out because they have that marketing in, or Conquer because they have that marketing in. You also see Perfect Dark. I saw Joanna Dark figure on my Facebook timeline. Like, it's interesting to see what these backwards compatible titles can do, and what these reissues of games essentially can do. I wouldn't consider them like remasters entirely, because a lot of them are in the same exact quality that we saw them in originally. Like with the Rare Replay, all they did was they map buttons to an Xbox controller for most of them, versus like an N64 or NES or whatever. All the way back to the fucking old school like PC essentially games. So it's kind of weird seeing this shift, but I'd like to see like another Jade Empire, because Jade Empire was such an underrated title. I'd also like to see Panzer Dragoon come back. I'd like to see Blinks come back. Mercenaries we haven't seen since I think the 360 era. So these games, they're getting another lease on life essentially to me. And the more titles we see hit this backwards compatibility, a lot of people I've talked to on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit have disagreed with me, but I really see the need for this kind of market, because gaming has kind of gotten a bit stale when you think about it. It seems like every year we see the same kind of games, shit out constantly. Your Call of Duties, your Battlefronts, your Battlefields, your, fucking, your Halos, you see all of these generic shooters. You see, another iteration of Skyrim, yeah. What is this, the 7th or 8th remaster or re-release of Skyrim that we're on right now with the VR one? You see stuff like that constantly come out, and it's kind of weird. BioWare is more preoccupied with Anthem right now. I get it. We're not going to see a Jade Empire or a KOTOR 3 or, Jade Empire 2 or KOTOR 3, sorry. Stuff like that we're not going to see for a while. I get that. They're trying to recuperate whatever funds they sunk into, the failure that was Mass Effect Andromeda. But they're also probably watching the market for, like, how many people buy Jade Empire on Xbox Live, or how many people play their old copy of it, essentially. Like, oh, I can run through this again, fuck yeah. This game was my shit back on the Xbox. Now I get to relive it, or I get to, experience it for the first time even. We see a lot of that from, like, the THQ remasters, like the Blob 1 and 2, they shot up on the sales charts because not a lot of people have experienced them, because the first one, I believe, was only a Wii game, and as successful as the Wii was, it didn't really sell that game very well, and that's why we saw D-Blob 2, multi-plat, with even a DS version or a 3DS version. I can't remember which one it was at the time. Stuff like that. Now with Destroy All Humans coming back, the remasters that came out not too long ago, but now people can experience the original. Like what was different from the original besides for the controls being different. Seeing that one would be cheaper than the other, I would assume as well. I haven't checked prices for them. I'm not even sure if all of them are listed on the marketplace at the moment. I know Morrowind was for a bit. I don't know if it still is, because I own a physical copy, so I don't really need to do that. But seeing the potential for maybe a Destroy All Humans 3 or 4, maybe there was a 3? Let me know if there was a 3 in the comments as well. I'm not sure if there was. I remember there was one in the works, but I don't remember if it ever got released. But it's giving us another chance to experience all these games, and for people to get to experience them the first time, it's so fucking wonderful. Because there were so many games that got swept under the rug of success, of like the Halos, the Call of Duties, all of that. Now we can potentially, you know, after the EA fiasco, see maybe another studio pick up like the Jedi Starfighter or the Republic Commando series. We might actually be able to see, you know, Mercenary come back and compete with the Saints Row and the fucking Grand Theft Autos of the world. We might see, you know, Destroy All Humans come back, and we can see just the zaniness of that series back on the screen. We can see, you know, another Jade Empire. We can see another Panzer Dragoon. We can see all this. But what I'd like to see is some of the more underrated, you know, RPGs and stuff like that. Because as little free time as I have, I spend most of my time role-playing in an RPG, you know, living my life in this alternate reality, far distracted from any fucking worries I have in the world. And as cliche as that sounds, it's what I do. Because I fucking hate my job. I hate, you know, the shit that I do in real life. I hate going to class, because every time I go to class, it feels like I'm being pulled in 7 different directions, but I still want to finish my degree. So sitting down and, you know, being able to decompress on that, and all the relaxation that comes from sitting in a world that's not my own, is the most fantastic feeling on the planet to me. And there were so many, you know, RPGs that were not only on the Xbox original, but on the 360, like your Eternal Sonatas, for example, on the 360, that were so underrated that they never really had a chance to succeed. So getting a chance to see these games get another release on life, and potentially, you know, fucking get a sequel through this program, if they're successful enough, it just gives me a little bit of hope that, you know, gaming's not going to be the same games every fucking year after year after year after year. So it's one of those things where it's so surreal to be able to sit back, relive what was my teenage years, and at the same time potentially give towards a new generation of gamers being able to experience a sequel right alongside me. So let me know what you think, what games you'd like to see remastered, or, you know, even get a sequel through this backwards compatibility program. You know, I know they won't essentially be through the backwards compatibility program. Don't take me for a moron here. But I'm gauging, you know, the fact that if they sell well enough, the developers will be like, do we still have the rights for this? Look at the fucking numbers. Look at the numbers. There's a lot of people that are interested in this game now. We can make money. We can make money. And it won't have to be through scummy microtransactions. We won't have to, you know, have a $20 skin that's the most purchased fucking product on the marketplace. Oh, okay. We saw the rights? Good. Let's get to work on a sequel. And to poke fun at that, we also see, before I end this video, if you don't believe that there's a push towards sequels, in the Voodoo Events Remastered, one of my friends actually shared an Easter egg he found in a graveyard. It was a Phil Spencer's headstone. We should have signed the goddamn sequel. And he just took a screenshot of it. Like, it's self-aware. Because, I don't know if it was because they saw how successful the remaster was and they patched it in, or if it was just a little, you know, joke from the fact that they were working on a sequel to the game, and they never signed it, and they saw how rabid the fan base was after they announced this remaster, or they're going to work on it. But it's interesting to see that, nonetheless. So, until next time, Planet Unity, peace.